and today I will be explaining a Tamil horror and fantasy film whose name is KINGSTON and Curse Sea. And it is also the first sea adventure horror film of India. So without any delay, let's quickly start the videos. So there is a city in Tamil Nadu called Thoothukudi, and it is mostly surrounded by the sea. So many trades happen through the sea route. So like Mumbai, it is a port industry city. Now there is a fisherman's village here called Thutha, and this story. The tale of this village commences in the year 1902, where during the night all the villagers were assembling by the seaside, and accompanying them was a priest who stood before a casket reciting from the Bible, and this casket was shaking violently, yet inside it was not a living person but rather a corpse, the most infamous corpse of this village, who had committed extremely wicked deeds. In their anger, the villagers beat him to death, but after his death he became an evil master and has tormented this entire village, which is why a sense of unease and dread has spread throughout the village. One mysterious death after another was occurring in the village, and there was an atmosphere of fear and terror everywhere. So to rid the village of this torment, the church's father has come here. Their assertion was that everything was occurring due to this cursed body, and to protect this village from the curse we must give it a sea burial, meaning a water burial. Although sea burial is not something new here, it is an ancient tradition of the village, but it was bestowed upon the most respected individual of the village, someone with the purest heart who had performed many good deeds in their life. The tradition of giving a sea burial to such a person has existed in this village, but out of compulsion to get rid of this death, these people are giving a sea burial to this man who has committed very bad deeds. From now on, the debt will be removed from the village, but the sea will become indebted. All the sea creatures around this cursed body will turn into dead creatures. The light around it will completely vanish. And since this ghost harbors enmity with the villagers, these people cannot venture into the sea after this. Otherwise the ghost will end there, so they would have to abandon fishing as well, which the people here would absolutely not accept. But given the current situation, these people do whatever the church father instructs. They take the casket out from the cemetery and bring it here, then properly melt the gold and place a seal on it. But during this time the weather turns bad and lightning starts to strike, and a bolt of lightning hits Don's village, causing a fire to break out in the village. All the villagers come together to put out the fire, and father, accompanied by a few people, takes this casket to the sea and performs the ritual by leaving it somewhere in the middle of the sea. Afterwards they put up barricades around the coastal area of the village. At that time everyone listens to the father, but how can they abandon the work they have been doing since their ancestors' time? Fishing was their only means of livelihood. So by breaking this rule, some people go fishing in the dark of night, but that hardship takes away their lives, and then their bodies are found on the shore. Now, considering the seriousness of the situation, the government here itself imposes a ban on fishing in this village. Now fishing was prohibited in their area, so they secretly went to another village at night to fish. But the people there wouldn't allow them to fish in their area. They beat them up and chased them away. So the situation was dire for Tuatha villagers, as their only livelihood was taken. They weren't educated, and besides fishing and Sumi knew nothing else. They were unable to comprehend what to do, and overwhelmed by these dire circumstances, they started taking their own lives. So now the narrative transitions to the year 2009. Here we observe a young child named King. King's father passed away due to this very curse, when he attempted to catch fish in it. Even King was aware from his villagers that his sea was afflicted with the curse, but he could not bring himself to believe it. He wanted to venture into the sea to uncover the truth, but his grandfather would never grant permission for this, and frequently advised him to keep his distance from the coast, saying that the sea is cursed. However, King found it hard to accept the notion of the sea being cursed. His argument was that everyone in Thoothukudi engages in fishing, and fat people from other villages also do fishing. Why is there only a fishing ban on our village? Why can't we catch fish from our sea? Then Grandpa explains to him that the ghost in the sea has enmity only with us villagers. That's why from our village. And he narrates the entire story to him. But King still doesn't believe any of this. To him, it all just seemed like a tale. Just then a man named Thomas arrives there like the villagers. Thomas is called Anna and is highly respected there because during the village's most difficult times when people were struggling with unemployment, Thomas had given. But behind all this there was a very significant essence hidden by Thomas. In reality, Thomas is a gangster and takes advantage of the unemployment in the village to make them do smuggling work, and that's why he also comes to talk to King. He says that the mistake your father made, you should not make that mistake. Stay away from the sea of your village, forget it, and work with me, earn a lot of money, and transform your life. He gives King money in advance and says that when you need me, meaning when you grow up, then come to work with me. But King was no less clever either. He had initially thought that he would earn a substantial amount of money and purchase his own boat with which he would venture into the middle of the sea to uncover the truth about the dead, and catch fish from there, to demonstrate to people and substantiate the matter of that it. Following this, the narrative transitions to the year 2025 from this point. That is in the present time, where Thomas had now become an even more formidable crime lord than before. Thomas had control over all the trades that occurred in Thottukudi, whether they were legal or illegal. In the entire Thottukudi, he had such an overwhelming influence that people used to say that not even a single fish moved in the sea without Thomas's permission. And as for the Thottadode village, he had a significant insurance presence there too. When someone passed away in the village, he would even send money to assist the family through his men. So just recently someone in the village had passed away, so Thomas sent money to their family. Alright, King had also grown up, meaning he was now an adult, and he worked for Thomas, and it was King who had to deliver the money to the family. Meanwhile, his friends were also waiting for him, wondering why King hadn't brought the money yet. On the other hand, King was sitting and playing card with the same money, because he needed to increase the money. And King had a special skill here, that he was a master in gambling. He never lost. And this time too he leaves after winning the money. And then he goes and gives the money to the family, but he keeps the money he won for himself, ensuring his own gain. But King's girlfriend, whose name is Rose, was fully aware of King's actions, which she absolutely did not like at all, and she even caught him keeping some money aside for himself. Every day she labels it as a kind of theft, and starts getting angry at him, saying that he has absolutely no shame and is only concerned about money, and begins to lecture him on what is right and wrong. You are doing all of. But King only found one thing right, that he should quickly accumulate a lot of money to buy a boat for himself so that he can go to the middle of the sea and uncover the dead burden. Therefore he doesn't pay attention to her words. On the other hand, King's grandfather has a dream in which he sees that King took a boat and went into the middle of the sea, and then gets trapped in a storm. During this time, ghouls, heist creators, and a lot of female zombies attack him, and at that moment his grandfather wakes up. King's grandfather often had this dream, and related it to the future, as if something that is going to happen in the future appears to him in the form of a dream. But he always prayed to God that it would never come true. After this, we see King and his friends, who after finishing work was sitting and drinking alcohol at night. Just then King's grandfather comes to bring him food. King tells his grandfather here that one day he will go to the sea and learn the truth about the curse, to which his grandfather says that he will never allow that to happen in his lifetime, and then he leaves from there. Whose name is? He says that the condition of his house is very bad, and he also needs to work. But the land that was bet was Robert's son, who was once Thomas's business partner, but he ran away with him. Therefore the friends of King said here that he is the son of a thief and we cannot place our trust in him, and they refuse to work with him. But King supports Benjamin here and says that if he is a thief's son, he will also be a thief, and Benjamin tells him that he will speak to Thomas for him. After this, we see a child sitting in front of the shore crying. His sister had gone missing, and he was weeping as he remembered her, wondering where she had disappeared to. And then he discovers his sister's dead body lying on. The child runs to see his sister and then starts calling out to his mother while crying, when suddenly his deceased sister grabs his leg, and when she turns around, she appeared to look like a zombie. But then in the very next moment, it is revealed that it was actually a dream that King's friend Kors was having. The child who was there was not Gower, and the girl was his sister, who had vanished many years ago. And then one day he discovered his sister's dead body on the shore. Interestingly, apart from the seekers, there is another peculiar thing in this village. Every month, a girl goes missing and then her dead body is found on the seashore. Something similar happened with Godson's sister. Godson has not been able to forget that incident to this day, and that's why he keeps having such dreams. Anyway, the next morning Benjamin comes to Godson's house because today they were going to take him to meet Thomas. They reach Thunderdome, where he introduces him to Thomas. But Thomas said what guarantee is there that he won't be a fraud like his father? To which 3 says that Anna is my guarantee. You won't have a chance to complain. Then Thomas hires Jermaine for work, and subsequently they take him along to teach him the work. And now we come to know what kind of work they actually do. They were involved in the smuggling of cucumbers. The sea creature that looks like a cucumber plays a very important role in maintaining a healthy ecosystem in the ocean. Therefore, the Indian government has imposed a complete ban on its fishing and exports since 2001. Despite this, it is smuggled secretly, because there is a high demand for it in the international market. Like in China, etc., there people eat it and it is considered quite an expensive food item. That's Sri Lanka. So Indian smugglers export it illegally to Sri Lankan smugglers who then sell it legally in the Chinese market. So it's legal and illegal tests continue. King's group does the same with bench Samin on this date. They go to the Sri Lanka border at night. But while working, bench Samin gained a lot of experience and turned out quite smart. This time, seeing the box's weight, he felt something was wrong. He said the weight of sea cucumber is never this much. The box heated it. There's something more in it. But the boss is told to open and check it. However, King Thomas was furious with Anna. He slaps him. That Thomas Anna talks about checking the box. Stay within your limits and quietly do your work. That's all. Then the Sri Lankan boat also arrives. Ben Samin is sent for the deal. Then Ben Samin ties a cloth over his face and jumps into the water. And goes to the Sri Lankan boat to give them the secret, inside which the code word of the deal was written, seeing which they show their toes and give an okay. Then what happened? Both start the boat and begin to transfer the goods, but then the police boat also arrives there. But red-handed, the police ask them to surrender, but they start to flee. At which point the police start firing at them, escaping from which everyone goes into their cockpit. But Ben Samin was on the other boat and was left outside. The police were continuously firing, which causes him to panic and he jumps into the water to return to his boat. King also notices that Ben Samin is in trouble and he too jumps into the water to save him. But before he can reach Ben Samin, the bullet reaches him. Risking his own life, King manages to bring him out from there, but Ben Samin was shot in the neck. He writhes in agony in front of them and breathes his last, and they do absolutely nothing for him. Everyone feels quite regretful about this, especially King. He was quite angry with himself, but he was also surprised as to why the police was so aggressive that they fired shots, wondering if Ben Samin's suspicion was indeed correct. Then when he opens a bus to check, he discovers something extremely shocking. Someone is involved in drug smuggling with Gumber through Thomas, which he uses to hide in Commerce Care. As soon as Thomas Anna's truth is revealed, he rebels and says that he will tell the villagers the truth about him, and from now on no one will work with him. To which Thomas says that the villagers are loyal to him, they will not listen to you. Then at Bench Samin's funeral he would send money through his men, but King wouldn't let them give the money and would drive them away after a quarrel. But then at night King couldn't sleep. He was still thinking about going to the sea. Thinking about all this, he starts to remember the story his grandfather had told him. The story goes back into a flashback that is to 1982. This story will reveal who the man really was whose body was given to the sea and what bad deed he had done. Here we learn another thing, that King's grandfather, whose name is Martin, is not his real grandfather. His real grandfather's name is Solomon. Martin was an orphan child whom Solomon adopted. At that time Solomon used to be the village chief. Now in those days there was no ban on sea cucumber fishing. So for more earnings these people also started sea cucumber fishing. But then one by one they began dying. Troubled by this, everyone went to Solomon. He said he'd find a solution, and then spoke to his friend Boar, explaining that villagers started fishing for sea cucumbers, which are found deep, requiring pearl diving skills. However, maintaining courage for a longer duration in water or managing underwater pressure, which they are not well versed in, and hence they are dying during fishing. Whereas their ancestors were masters in this, but today's skill has been forgotten. Now Buzz also knew pearl diving because he had been in the army, but now he had become bad, so it was not possible for him to give training. However, the village teacher Antony was highly skilled in this. So he advised his boss to speak with Antony because boss had been his teacher and he wouldn't disregard his mentor's words. Then when boss visits Antony's house to have a conversation with him, Antony declines. Her concern was about who would take care of her daughter after her, to which boss makes a promise to her that he will take care of her daughter and treat her just like his own daughter. Only then does Antony finally agree, but then Antony also does not return alive from the sea. Instead his dead body is brought back. 16-man and boss couldn't believe how this could happen, how such a professional diver could die. Now even 16-man started feeling that something was wrong in the sea and wondered if the sea was cursed, but then after some time the truth comes out where 16-man holds the boss responsible for all these deaths and exposes him in front of everyone, saying that gold was found with the boss, and then reveals a very shocking fact that the boss secretly tortures the fishermen here and forces them to extract gold from the depths of the sea. However, not everyone can handle such deep pressure, so some people also died to fulfill his greed. He was just putting everyone's life into a race and making them work. And when The truth came out, the boss killed him too. And that's why he brought the boss to justice by beating him up in front of all the villagers. So what happened next is that the villagers came and pounced on the dead boss, beating him to death. But even after dying, the boss's greed was not satisfied at all. His spirit did not leave this world and returned to take revenge. To calm his greed and anger, his gold was melted and a seal was placed on his caste. And then after this, as she knows now, back to the present time, where we see Rose, who is alone in her house. Just then the lights suddenly go out, and she hears some noises, which frighten Rose a lot. But before she can understand anything, someone comes and grabs her. Meanwhile, King was still standing by the barricade, lost in his thoughts. Then he notices some people putting someone in a boat and throwing them into the sea. King and his friends go and stop them, and then King sees that it was Rose, and the ones kidnapping her were none other than Thomas's men. When they asked them what they were doing with Rose, they reveal that it is a kind of ritual. To keep the evil power in the sea calm, they throw a virgin girl into the sea every month. And they do all this on Thomas Anna's orders. Then Garson also realizes that his sister has also become a victim of this ritual. In anger, he loses his temper and comes to kill them. But the king stops him, saying what will happen by killing them. All this is being orchestrated by Thomas. Her thought was that Thomas had a big hand in strengthening the story of the dead, which he could exploit to make us do smuggling. Now Kasha's words seemed like mere rumors to him. And now he doesn't even listen to Dada, thinking, Dada, you're also telling me useless stories. Kept away from the sea and sent to work near Thomasana, but now I am not going to stop. Now I will definitely go to the sea. In front of his victory, even his grandfather cannot say anything, but Kim did not even have his own board. So how would he go to the sea? That's why he thinks of stealing Thomas's board. Thomas's men try their best to stop him, but King still manages to steal the board. When he calls to inform Thomas Anna about this, it is King who answers the phone. And it is revealed here that King had previously kidnapped Thomas and placed him on this board. And then King, along with his friends, sets out to break this seeker's friend. However, while on the way, they start hearing a sound coming from a room, which frightens them. It seems that the death story is true. A ghost has entered the vote. But actually it happens inside that room every day. She had also come to join King. At first, King tries to refuse her, saying it could be risky, but after Rose insists, he agrees, and then the journey continues. So far, everything was going well. Then suddenly an old lamp breaks from one of King's doses. When King goes outside, a piece of glass gets stuck in his foot. He takes out the piece of glass and throws it into the sea. And then his eyes fall on the papers taken out from the lab. And he begins to examine those papers, but as the blood-stained piece of glass enters the sea, strange things start to occur. They now hear the sound of a boat's horn. Garson looks from afar and sees a boat in the distance. But then in the very next moment it vanishes. Then they hear the sound of a horn from different directions. And now the boat sometimes appears to them and sometimes disappears, because it was a haunted, ghostly boat. Suddenly the weather also deteriorates and it begins to rain heavily. And at that moment they notice that this sea is filled with thousands of human skeletons. It is then that they come to believe that this place is truly cursed. Suddenly a storm arises in the sea, and now they find themselves trapped in a dire situation. During this time, lightning strikes with a loud crack, and its intense light dazzles King's eyes, causing him to lose his balance and fall out of the cockpit. Then in an attempt to escape the storm, he grabs hold of a rope and hangs onto it. During this time, a large wave is about to collide with the boat. Somehow they manage to avoid the wave, but due to the strong impact, everyone falls down and becomes unconscious. Then when they regain consciousness, they realize that one of their companions was missing, who the next moment is seen sitting in the corner, and he looked quite scared and very frightened. So they go to see him to find out what happened to him, whereupon he shows them that he found a blood-soaked skull and blood was continuously oozing from inside it, which frightens them a lot. On the other hand, Kim's grandfather had found out that he had gone to the sea to find out about the curse. To save him, his grandfather also takes a board and goes into the sea. These individuals were eager to depart from this place, but now they had lost their way, and their navigation devices had also ceased to function. Then a peculiar mist envelops the path, and as soon as they pass through it, these incidents transition to another realm, where Rose encounters a fish, but the fish was actually a master. Every day she becomes very frightened, and then King arrives to reassure her that everything is alright, the creature has left. But then King discovers that their most cowardly friend who had found the skull had once again disappeared. Actually, he went to the basement out of fear, and accidentally got locked in the same room where Thomas and his men had also tied up the people. Then King also goes towards the basement in search of him. When he realizes that King has come to get him, he starts banging on the door and says, "Brother, get me out of here." But there were strange things happening there as well. Knocking sounds were coming from all the rooms, which made King confused. He couldn't figure out which room his friend was in, so he randomly opened the door to check. But instead of his friend, there was a zombie-like monster who haunted the king and then vanished into the darkness the very next moment. Just then the king hears a knocking sound coming from behind. This time, when he opens the door, he finally finds his friend, and he was so scared that as soon as he opened the door, he ran upstairs. Then King returns to manage the boat and hears a sound, as if someone jumped onto the boat. They find a man lying there and wonder where he came from. When King goes to see him, shockingly it's boss's grandfather. Actually, King's grandfather was also killed by death. Meanwhile, villagers find his body on the shore, and this is the tormented version of his grandfather. At that moment, a zombie emerges from the water, who had come to claim his grandfather, and takes him back into the water with him. Then King also jumps into the water after his grandfather, and his friend follows him into the water as well. In the water, King was searching for his grandfather, his friend was searching for King, and the rest were throwing ropes to pull them out. At that moment, someone grabs Godson's leg, but Godson shakes his leg and makes them fall, and then he sees that it was his guy, who had transformed into a zombie due to death. Subsequently, a large number of zombies climb onto the boat. These were the same girls who had been put in Thomas' Sea, and they looked so terrifying that out of sheer fear these people froze in place, and the zombies caught them. But showing courage, Rose fights here, and not only that, she beats them with a box to free her friends as well. She frees herself, and then avoiding him locks herself in the cockpit, but Godson recognizes his sister among them and becomes emotional, so his friend slaps him to bring him to his senses, saying that this is not your sister, it's a zombie's sister. He regains consciousness and starts thinking of ways to escape from them, when suddenly they also break the glass and attempt to catch them from the window itself. And just then King returns to the boat with his friend, which diverts all the zombies' attention towards them, and now all of them cling to King and his two companions, but King was not one to back down. He was fighting back with determination. And amidst all this, one of Thomas's men somehow manages to free himself and begins to escape from there, but little did he know that a zombie attack was happening here. He gets scared upon seeing the zombies, and the zombies become happy upon seeing him. Leaving everyone else aside, they come to grab him, and perhaps this is because they were Thomas's men, with whom they had a personal enmity. In an attempt to escape from them, the man jumps into the water. All of them jump into the water after him, and then grab him and take him underwater. After all this, King remembers that his grandfather was trying to signal something to him. Then he remembers the papers that came out of LA. Then when King reads them, he discovers a very shocking and surprising fact, that the real culprit was not actually Boss, but instead his real grandfather Solomon. He used to extract gold from the lives of the village fishermen by putting them in trouble, but Boss found out about it and caught him with the gold. But then the boys working for Solomon attacked him and beat him up very badly, leaving him half dead. Then Solomon took him in such a stake before the villagers and implicated Boss's name, getting him killed by them. And only Kim's grandfather knew this truth, but out of fear he couldn't tell anyone. So he wrote it down and put it in this boat, and didn't tell King the whole truth either. His grandfather's truth was always hidden from him. Now King said here that Boss was initially a pure soul, but the injustice done to him filled him with a sense of revenge, and now his soul has also become corrupt, and because of that, death has spread in the sea. Now in order to free this sea from death, something must be done about its casket, but what exactly? Because if they remove it from the sea and bury it in another place, that place will also become indebted. At that moment, the equipment starts working again, which gives King an idea to take the casket to a nearby deserted island and bury it there. So what happened next was that these people started moving forward from here towards the casket place, and they also took Thomas and his men outside and tied them up, but then suddenly the boat's motor stopped. Upon checking, it was discovered that a net had gotten stuck in the motor. So King Thomas sends his man to remove the net, but just as he begins to remove the net, the sea zombie catches hold of him. Now these people immediately start pulling him up to save him, but only his severed hand comes up. The zombie monster had eaten him, but now the casket was not too far, so King takes a big risk here. He thinks of swimming to reach it himself and goes into the water, but then he sees that there were many caskets lying there. All of them were sealed with seaweed, but the boss's casket had a gold seal. so it wasn't difficult for him to identify the real casket. Meanwhile, the king had almost reached the glass casket, but on the other side the zombie master had also climbed onto the board. He was standing behind Gatsun, but Gatsun was not yet aware of it. He was busy lowering the oxygen pipe for the king. Just then the zombie grabs him and throws him down with force, and then starts attacking everyone else as well. At that moment the oxygen also runs out, causing the king to start suffocating. To breathe he must leave the casket and come up immediately, but amidst all this they had completely forgotten about Thomas, who was now free, and grabs King from behind. And now he also reveals a very shocking secret of his own. He was also employed by Solomon, and it was he who rescued Solomon from the boss, but then when he requested 10% in gold for this task, Solomon categorically refused. So what happened was that he, along with the other boys, ended Solomon's life and looted all his gold, including his gold chain, which he still wears around his neck even today. Then they placed Solomon's dead body in the bus casket, but he still desired more gold. Now he went to Solon's house and finished off his rebellious family too, but Kim's dates were with his grandfather, so they were saved. Then Thomas also took all the gold and fled the village because Solon's spirit was after him. His other companions had already fallen prey to it. Then sometime later, when he returned to the village, he found out that there was a feature ban in the village. Then he left the village and became a gangster outside. And he also mentions that every month he sacrificed girls because he had noticed it during the ritual. When Annie's daughter placed her hand on the casket, it became quiet for a short period because the boss regarded her as if she were his own daughter. So in order to keep the curse at bay, he would sacrifice a virgin girl to the sea every single month, so that the curse would be appeased and he could carry out his work in the sea properly. Now because King Ruse's sacrifice was stopped, the curse's effect was not diminished, and therefore when the king's grandfather went to the sea, the curse claimed him. Anyway, after saying all this, Thomas is about to kill King, but then suddenly they reach the place from the sea where Thomas had killed them 16 times. And all this was actually their spirit 16 times. At that moment a car approaches from the front from which 16 emerges. He rescues the king from Thomas and controls the same locket, forcefully pulling it towards himself, causing Thomas's neck to be severed. In this way he took his rocket and his revenge from him. Then Solomon informs the king that there is an abundance of gold in this sea which he has been guarding for many years, even after his death, solely so that he can present it to the king. But the king responds by saying that due to your greed our village has suffered greatly, but I am not greedy like you. I should not possess any gold. Therefore I came here to settle this debt, and I will indeed do exactly that. And then he returns to the water once again. King had realized that to calm this debt for some time, he would have to touch the casket, because he too is Solomon's grandson. On the other hand, the zombie is about to kill them, but by then the king touches the casket, which weakens the effect of the death, and the zombie master also leaves from there. Then they pull the king up with the casket, and in the meantime the weather also clears up completely. Then they go from there to the same deserted island and cut the skate there. As soon as the death is removed from the sea, a lot of fish come there in abundance. Then he catches a large number of fish and takes them back to his village and informs everyone that the trouble has come to an end, which makes the villagers extremely happy, and they also remove the banned board. And with this the film concludes at this point. So friends, this was the KINGSTON movie. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care and keep watching.